So here we are. We're going to try something. All that you need to know about trapping predators, fur bearer trapping for fox, bobcat, and coyote. All you need to know in the next 15 minutes. 15 minutes, it's not very long. Heck, I've already lost a minute of it. Stay tuned. Hit Billy Outdoor, DW Verts. A little discussion. Hopefully teach you something. Okay, I said 15 minutes. Obviously, I've got way too much wind in me for that. I'm a little bit flattered. Some folks have asked me questions on my YouTube channel about details. Guys, maybe I'm not the one to give details. There's a lot of videos, a lot of great information on YouTube and VHS and the old tapes, some of the old stuff. Matter of fact, I'll tell you right now, if you want to see the best stuff that I learned from, look up Tom Miranda, FFG, and see if you can find any of his videos. That's why I learned a lot of the stuff besides what you learn trial and error. But anyway, a lot of videos. There's also a lot of BS out there. I'm not into pomp and circumstance. I'm not into trivial stuff. I'm into basics. So get that out of the way. This is my opinion. 45 years. I still have a lot to learn. I'm still not by any means the best trapper out there. There's better trappers. There's people do it better than I do, maybe more efficient. I'm going to show you the way I do it. Okay? How to catch fox, bobcat, and coyote in as short amount of time as possible. So you're not going to get everything. You're going to get enough to get started. Number one thing when it comes to catching a critter is you have to put that animal's paw on that 2.5 inch whatever square, circle, whatever. So you have to put that trap where he's going to put his paw. There's a science to it. There's an art. Trapping is not, by any stretch of imagination, a sport. Trapping is an art. When you make a set, you are building a piece of art, a functional piece of art. Number one thing, so how do you do that? Well, it takes practice, but from the mega scale, okay, you have to find where the animals are. Scouting is huge important. So, a lot of walking, a lot of riding around the fort or whatever, but I get on the ground, put boots down on the ground, and do a lot of walking. Find sign. Bobcat sign is hard to find. Bobcats are ghosts. If you can go out after a couple inches of snow, any kind of snow, you learn to identify a cat track, that's going to be your best help. If you know where somebody has seen a cat or you have seen a cat, that's where you catch that cat. He'll be back. It's amazing how you can catch You see one, you'll catch him there. Yes, you will. Okay, so you find sign, you find droppings or tracks. You set the traps at the droppings or tracks. You don't set it on that ditch that runs over the creek there where the road crosses and that fence row is, all the pretty things that you hear about in the books. That's later. Set on the sign. So if you're in a 2-track going down next to a creek, next to a farm field, there's droppings in the middle of that track, you put your traps as close to those droppings as you can, because that animal will be back in that general vicinity. Same thing with tracks. Pretty simple. Don't look for the pretty stuff, look for where it works, okay? And if this works out, people might want to hear more, I'll get more detailed on that. I can get really specific. Set on sign. Number one. Number two, there's 3 sets, basically. There's variations. The dirt hole, which I use a double dirt hole, that's more explanation we need right now. I always use 2 dirt hole. Flat sets and scent posts, and combinations thereof. They can all actually be the same set. You need to learn to play the wind. Okay? So here's the deal. Here's north. And say the wind is blowing straight out of the north. In the wintertime here in Missouri, we got north-northwest winds. And here is your set. That X is the middle of your pan. That's where you want the animal to put his feet, right? You want to put a paw right there. Okay? You need to set so that animal is going to come into that wind. He's going to turn. He may circle, but he's going to come into that trap. Especially red fox and coyotes, but they're not going to come straight in. They're going to come in at about a 45-degree angle. They're going to come in from the southwest or southeast. You dig that? So you have to set that trap up thinking about that. About the major wind direction. Now, wind changes every day sometimes. but you set for the prevalent winds. In Missouri, that's west-northwest. Cover the bases, okay? So you need to learn to pay attention to what the wind's doing, pay attention to what the forecast says. We have a lot of these warm winters, we got a lot of south winds, so it's the opposite. I set for an animal to come 45 degrees into my set from downwind, okay? Remember that, simple. Okay, moving on. A trap for a predator. If you have one trap is all you can afford. You can buy a dozen traps. And you're trapping fox, bobcat, and coyote, go with a 1 3/4. It'll hold everything. 2 coil, it don't have to be fancy. There's trap mods that I do, obviously, but a 1 3/4. If foxes are your, and for me, unfortunately, they're kind of my third tier, and I love catching fox. Of course, I have traps for them. And I use a lot of 1.5s for foxes. Can't beat it. Go with a number 2. A number 2, 2 coil, whatever brand, whatever. I use Bridgers mostly. I have all kinds of traps, but I mostly use Bridgers. A number 2. You don't have to have number 3s. There's times that are going to be beneficial, but a number 2, 2 coil, simple. 1 3/4 if you only have one trap, and if you'll trap fox also. If you're trapping everything else, bobcat and coyotes, go with a number 2. Pretty simple, right? Learn the 3 sets and just go from that afterwards. Learn the flat set, learn the dirt hole set, learn the scent post. They can all be the same set. Learn those 3 sets. Learn how to set them according to the wind. I'm going to say it over and over. It's very important. Most people just go out and throw a set into the ground and they call it good. Don't forget that. After that, there's blind sets, there's cubby sets. That is your 3 basic sets. At least my 3 basic sets. Okay? Probably the biggest mistake that folks make when they're putting a trap in the ground for a predator is not getting it bedded solid. If that trap wobbles and moves in the bed, you're going to have issues. A raccoon, if that trap moves, he's going to dig that trap out. It's hilarious how they can dig it out, flop it over upside down, never get caught, never fire the trap. If you don't get that trap bedded solid, a coyote's going to step on the edge of that bed, it's going to move, and you're done. He'll dig around, he'll excavate it. So, the way that I do it, if this is ground level, my pan beds will look like this, fairly square-sided, but there'll be a bowl. The trap will set in that bowl, okay? Not up here. I will put the dirt in on that trap. I'll fill it in like this, with dirt just above the pan. For coyotes, I put as much as a 1/2 inch over the pan. I bury those traps, guys. Get it underground. If you are not putting your pan a little bit lower than anything else around you, you're going to miss some critters. Bare minimum, your trap will be even with the top of the ground. That's too high. If your trap is above the ground, your pan is above, that's bad. They do not like to step up in anything. Try to make your sets where there's a little depression, the pan's in the middle, just a little one. Okay? Do not be afraid to pack that dirt around that trap hard. That's the reason for 4 coils. It's another subject. 2 coils work also. Okay? Pack it in solid. I don't know how they do it with peat moss. I'm not a peat moss guy. Look up videos from Robert Waddell. Man's an ex-Marine, friend of mine. He has a way of approach. He catches more animals than anybody on the planet. He catches more coyotes than anybody in the country. Maybe anybody ever has. He uses peat moss. I don't. He'll show you how to bed with peat moss, how it works. Bed that trap solid. If it rocks, if it tips in that bed, you are going to screw yourself out with a lot of critters. It took me several years to figure that out. It's very important. Bait and lure. Boy, that could be 25 videos. I don't use a lot of bait. I don't like catching non-targets, even though we need to catch every possum, skunk, and coon that walks the planet. We need to kill them all. I don't use a lot of bait. When I do use bait, Cletus's Apple Road's really good. The Hiawassee Valley from NTP. Anything will catch critters. I used to make my own. Predator Prime Rib, I called it. I don't use a lot of bait. Okay? I use lure. And good urine. You cannot beat good urine, and it's just harder and harder to come up with. If you found a place to get some, let me know. And good urine's going to cost you some money. Guys, you know what you can do? You can pee on your own set. You take a scent post set, and you can pee on it. A coyote don't know no better. The red fox don't know better. Cats are attracted to anything. Yeah, you think I'm kidding. Deer, it's just urine. They don't know the difference. And that's the freshest, come on, how fresh can you get, but just come out of you. How's that for weird? Lures. The colder the weather, the louder the lure. You don't want to be too loud if it's 40, 50 degrees out. Too loud blows animals off. Get yourself 4 or 5 lures, from skunky loud to a lure that's a castor base. Most best lures out there have castor, beaver castor. Tremendous. Straight beaver castor works just fine. Beaver lures work fine. Not a big deal. I don't use food lures. Makes no sense. I use gland lures and some louder stuff like the skunk stuff. It just, a little bit of skunk's great no matter what. A lot of skunk's great when it gets down well below freezing into zeros. That's where the loud stuff really works the best. Don't have to have a bunch of stuff, okay? If you want to use bait, wonderful. I use 85-90% of my predator sets will have 1, 2, or 3 lures, or 1, 2 lures and urine. I probably use urine at 65% of my sets, and all I use is red fox and bobcat. I don't use coyote anymore. I've tried. I just don't see an advantage to it. Bobcat, red fox. Simple. Moving on. Anchor in a trap. Do not use 14 gauge wire. Don't use wire on nothing. I don't care if you make a hinge. Don't use wire. Cable. If you're going to cable something off, cable. Learn how to make cable. Learn how to get furrows and crunch them down. I use a pair of bolt cutters. I file the jaws flat. I have a high dollar crimper. That bolt cutter works just fine. I did it yesterday on some. I use regular Berkshire anchors. The regular, standard. I use them in everything up, and sometimes including rock. I use mine on 9 to 12 inch cable. I don't use mine very long. It wears me out having that long, having like cable to deal with. That's me. If you want to use the Wolf Fangs, you want to use whatever other brands, but you gotta have a good anchor system. I use drags on my freaking Bobcats because I make these crazy Bobcat sets, like half cubby sets, that if a cat gets away from that set, it saves me having to rebuild the whole thing. You hardly ever get away perfect. I use 7 or 8 foot of chain and a drag. I do not use drags on coyotes. Some of the guys do that. I can't believe they get away with it. It works for them, but you better use a lot of chain. You need them getting hung up. Bobcats won't go very far at all. I hang an anchor in a sapling. Sometimes that's all they go. Bobcats don't fight as hard as a coyote does, and they don't have a tendency to run a half mile pulling the drag behind them. Anchor, anchor, anchor. Solid. Learn how to do that. I personally don't use pan covers or anything underneath my pan. Personal preference. That's up to you. If you see my other videos, I talk about using pan tension and a night latch. You can put all you want underneath my pans. They're not going to move enough getting caught up in. They're going to fire. I've used the wire screen over the years, made it myself, old window screen. I never use the underall foam underneath. I don't want something that changes in weather either. So, personal preference. If you make a pan that fires without any movement to speak of, and my last video, Night Latch, shows that. If you can do that and put tension on it where it has to have weight, you don't need no pan covers. Pan covers, something else getting away and something else you got to pack with you. Except in the far deep south, and even then maybe sometimes you have to have something to keep your traps from freezing into the ground. A frozen trap will not catch an animal, and it's going to rain on your set sometime while it's in the ground, and then it's going to freeze. That's just what it is in Missouri. It's that way a lot of places because we're trapped in the wintertime. I use strictly straight up pure calcium chloride. It just works too well for me. If you want to use Mr. Peat Moss, good for you. I am going to sprinkle calcium chloride in the bottom of my set. I'm going to sprinkle it layered in as I put dirt in. As I pack that dirt around them jaws, I'm going to sprinkle that calcium chloride in. I'll throw another swath across the top, spray it out in little ways, and it only works once it starts to get wet. The white doesn't bother the animals. Pure calcium chloride, I get it at Maynard's, Menards. I get it there. A big bag will last me for a long time, and I use a lot of it. Okay, this gets so complicated, but I think it's fairly important, is how close you put that pan to your attractor, to your set. The thing to think about, and don't take this too far. Here, right there at the end, that's a coyote's nose. His front paws are down here. Nose, paws. A fox is nose, paws. Nose. That's how far apart it is. A bobcat is nose, paws. That last step they take, that difference when they're getting in close to a set. Okay? For coyotes, they'll 10 inches back and 4 inches offset. Now, that's why I use the double dirt hole. I don't have to worry about that. I guess I'll show this. Here's my two holes, 10, 12 inches apart. Here is my pan in the center. I don't care how, it kills my offset. No matter what, they come in 45 degrees either way to that hole, I can get them. So that's simple. That's too much, but that's simple. If you are in doubt, you can crowd the set, put the trap a little bit closer, you'll still catch coyotes. You'll just catch more coyotes if you think that his nose, his eyes and his nose are way out in front of it. He's a big animal. He can stand back from a set and be way close enough to get what he wants without stepping on the pan. Pretty simple. Experiment if you're not sure and take notes, write what worked for you, okay? That's a little bit too complex, but I think it's kind of important. You don't want to put you don't want to do this. If you're setting a trap for a bobcat, and say you got a big old bone here, and you got a big old flashy dirt hole here, and this is the size of them. You got a big old T-bone right here, and here's your dirt hole with your bait or whatever. Got some lure on here. You don't want that pan back here. You want it right there, okay? Or right. You got to think how big an animal is, okay? I think that's fairly important. It's probably too much for this video, but I think it's pretty important. Something to keep the trap from freezing in. Some good lure, some bait, upwind of the trap. So that means you trap both sides of a road, both sides of a trail. This brings me to my last point. It's a very important point. Say we're going to have northwest winds for the next few days. Front's going through like right now here in Missouri. I'm going to set, no matter what, 2 or 3 traps every location or more. If it's worth 1 set, it's worth 2 or 3. Guaranteed, you set 1 trap, a grinner's going to come plug it up first thing. They're the fastest animals in North America. They beat everything else to your set. If it's worth 1, it's worth 2. If it's worth 2, it's worth 3. And I have set, for coyotes, a lot of times I'll set 5 sets within inside of each other. But I'll group them. You catch an animal, other animals with him, they get shook up. They don't just leave. That's why the scent post is always good, or a flat set with some urine. Say you catch them in a dirt hole first. Whatever. Animals are circling around, they're shook up. They get downwind of that other set, which may be on the other side of the trail where you set. So you're playing the wind both ways. They're going to have to pee. They got to relieve that, and that's how you catch doubles and triples. And Lord help me, I caught a quadruple once. I thought that was pretty cool. I'd love to do that again. I had 6 traps out, 5 of them fired and caught 4. I'd never caught 2 if I hadn't had 2 traps out. Multiple sets. On location, no freezing, bait and lure. I like lure and urine again. Play the wind. Solid bedded trap. Boy, I can preach this stuff over and over. I should have made a list of notes. I never do. Someday I probably won't. Some folks have asked. I think I got that covered pretty well. There's so many more things that really, I'm not into pomp and circumstance. I'm not into cool sets that have whatever. For bobcats, I use a lot of side appeal at my sets. Everything else is invisible. How's that? That's another one. Should have said that earlier. Bobcats, I use the feathers. I use bones. I use some bones for other critters too. I just don't have them up and high. I use hanging feathers for cats. I use tinsel. I've got several things, and I'll probably show some that in the next few weeks as I start trapping some cats. Coyotes and red fox, I can't find those sets sometimes unless there's an animal in them. If it snows, if it's going to snow, I have to mark it around. I have a way of marking them. I can't find them. They're disappeared. They're hidden. The best kind of sets for coyote will be an invisible set. They don't want to be, they get shook up. Coyotes don't trust them. They get shook up. Bobcat, they go, huh? They love, you can put a Christmas tree with all the lights on it, a bobcat to come to it, a coyote will run. Big coons like it. Gray fox like visuals. Gray fox is more like a bobcat and he is a dog. They're way more like a cat. So I should have said that earlier. Maybe I'll edit this. Yeah, whatever, I'm busted. So, flashy sets for cats, gray fox, not so flashy for red fox, although I've caught them with a feather hanging. Coyotes have to get used to it. You want to catch them the first night or two, three if possible. Because every animal runs these cycles, these circuits. Wow, there's more there than you need to know. Also, leave your traps out for at least 8 to 10 days. Do not pull them traps too fast. It takes several days, especially when you're new and maybe spooking some animals a little bit or whatever. It takes several days for those animals to work through an area. Cats are really bad until it comes closer to mating season, and they get worse. 10 days is a pretty good time frame for most predators. Gray fox will live in a 5-6 acre area. Red fox, 15, 20, 30 acres maybe. Bobcats and coyotes, they go county to county sometimes. That's too much, guys. This went too long. If you like this, let me know. I am not... There's so many guys that are better at this than I am, but I have people ask, and I'm starting to feel like folks are supporting this channel. I need to tell them some things or try to help them out. So there you are. Got questions, let me know. If you like what we're doing, subscribe. I plan to get on the beaver line next week, an otter, muskrat, mink, do some of that in the creek first, which is backwards what we usually do. And then sometime after Christmas, we'll start catching coyotes, fox, and cats. Okay? God bless y'all. Thanks for watching. We'll talk at you later.